Afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our RTA special meeting that we requested at our last RTA general meeting session that we hosted for May. The time is 3:32. We want to call this meeting to order. I have a quick preamble to read before we go ahead and do our roll call. One moment while I pull that up. The governor has issued executive orders requiring individuals to remain in their homes except for certain activities, closing many businesses to the public and prohibiting any gatherings which do not comply with his terms. Because of the risk to the public that would arise from a continued in-person meeting pursuant to NCGS 166A-19.24, the city is converting Raleigh Transit Authority meetings to a remote electronic format for the duration of the state of the emergency. We'll start this meeting by doing a quick roll call. All right, Nathan Spencer.
Present.
Karen Ridge. Michael Stevenson.
Here.
Christopher Jones. Daniel Coleman.
Here.
Morris Cook.
Here.
Brian Burnett. Joshua Gill.
Here.
Sarah Prado. Robert Owens. Do we have any city council liaisons present? And Talulupe Omokaye, I myself am also present.
Madam Chair, were all the presents, were those verbal? I didn't hear everybody say yes.
It sounds like all the ones that are here said yes.
Okay, may have been my...
The only discrepancy I see is Mr. Robert Owens is appearing, but I did not hear his verbal response.
He actually I think he's frozen because he's been in that position since we got on the call. So his face may be frozen. So he is here. I do see his face, even though he didn't say here.
Well, we don't know that he's connected, do we? If he's frozen?
I'm hearing all of you.
Okay, so get a present from him then.
Yes, Robert Owens.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No problem. I am going to go ahead and jump right into the first item for our preliminary matters. We've had a call to order. We've done our introductions. Do we have any additions or revisions to the agenda that we're going to go over, which is just basically the annual Go Raleigh and Go Raleigh Access budget?
That is correct, and I'll be happy to present that if you're ready now.
Yeah, I'll pass it over to you. Thank you, David.
Outstanding. So this afternoon, what we're going to do is we're going to run through our operating budget methodology very quickly. We'll also talk a bit about the Wake Transit Plan. Certainly have staff here to answer any specific questions that may be out there. We'll also do a little bit deeper dive on our administrative budget through the Wake Transit Plan, which was requested at the last meeting, and we didn't have all of that information at that time. So we'll have a bit more information today on that as well. Again, before you kind of have our process and timeline. This whole process really wraps up hopefully by June 30, which July 1 would be the beginning of our next fiscal year. That includes a number of approvals. Please remember that transit staff works with a number of stakeholders on developing this budget. Certainly, the City of Raleigh Budget Office is a large contributor to our overall effort, as well as we work with TPAC, all of our stakeholders through the Wake Transit planning process in order to develop that budget as well. That budget, the Wake Transit Plan budget, believe it or not, actually begins in September. So it's kind of hard to believe. We'll be looking at June in just a matter of days. And in September, we'll start this all over again, just right around the corner. So it really is almost a year-long process to get through all of the approvals and development of the budget. Next slide. So certainly, as we are going through this particular year's budget, certainly the COVID-19 impacts are a major consideration. At many levels, whether it's our City of Raleigh budget or whether it was the Wake Transit budget, it really required us to take a step back deep into the budget process in order to think about how do we continue to move forward with projects in a responsible way, but also understand the gravity of the situation that has unfolded before us over the last 2 months or so. It's truly unprecedented. So as you can see, we continue to closely monitor expenditures and cash flow, and also that was a big rethink process as far as our revenues go into FY21. As we stated last time, overall, our FY21 budget on our municipal budget hasn't changed. Some of our revenue projections and how we will pay for things have changed because of those revenue impacts, but our base budget has stayed steady. Can't say that we've got a lot of new initiatives, so certainly what we've tried to do is make sure that we maintain existing levels and adjust our revenues to carry forward what we've started in 20 into 21 with some very modest changes in 21 as well. Next slide. So this is the Wake Transit Plan's process and timeline. The release for the FY21 work plan 30-day comment period. And then on June 17th, we look for Campo, and then on the 24th, Go Triangle to hold their public hearings as it relates to those adopted budgets for the Wake Transit Plan itself. And then June 30th, certainly we look for overall adoption of the city's budget somewhere in that time frame in June. Next slide. Again, this is just kind of a recap of what I've already said. Revisited revenue, COVID-19 brings uncertainty, prioritization exercise for operating and capital requests, especially on the Wake Transit side, because that's where our true growth is coming from. On the city side, everything is pretty steady, making sure that we keep our existing services going, but not looking for much expansion in any way. Really just making sure that we're holding the line for our FY20 into 21. Next slide. So at the last meeting, this is the actual area where there was some question regarding our administrative budget within the Wake Transit Plan. I'm going to actually come back to this slide, so if we'll just mark this slide and then we can flip back to it in just a moment. But for right now, I'll go ahead and go to the next slide. So our recommended work plan for Wake Transit Plan for FY21, as you can see, we're really just looking at those things that are critically needed. Next slide. And what that boils down to is Route 21, reducing the headway on that route in FY21 from a 60-minute headway to a 30-minute headway all day, a modest increase. The reason for that is pre-COVID-19, we were looking at ridership in the 50 to 55 passenger per hour range, which was very challenging. Even now, this particular route serves a number of critical facilities, including Oak City Cares and other human service agencies. So it is a very important route for mobility. And we do think that keeping that at 30-minute frequency, even in our current environment, is an important goal. We have our BRT funding, again, maintaining our existing programming that started in 20 into 21. So that will be staying. We did keep our office space funding because that particular office space, this is a lease for that space, but that space is actually under upfit, and that started pre-COVID as well. So that actual space over at Union Station was already under construction. And then all other projects, about 65% of the total Wake Transit Plan budget, it went into unbudgeted reserve. So basically 65% of everything that we plan to do, we said we're putting it on hold and we're going to have to wait and see how things unfold. Next slide. This provides an overview of just what that looks like. So you can see the improvements to the Route 21 Raleigh. You can see our office lease. Again, that was under construction pre-COVID-19. And that is the actual annual lease cost for that space once that is ready for us to move into. As you know, we're now in many different locations as a transit staff, and this will consolidate us over at Union Station. Below, if you look at everything that says FY21, and that is reserve, all of those projects from bus stop improvements, enhanced transfer points, Midtown Transit Center, our ADA facility, all of those out, including our bus replacements, all of that has been put into reserve. Our Go Raleigh support vehicles also in reserve. Two items remain. One is the BRT programming, and the reason that's there is that has to be in balance. If we were to get a federal award for that, then we have to show that that match is available. And then the other one is transit origin and destination surveys by the Wake Transit Plan. We're not sure if that's actually going to happen in 21 or if that would happen in early fiscal year 22. We're working with everyone to find out. Certainly, as we look at route planning, our MPO long-range transportation planning, all of these elements and our transportation models at a local transit level as well as a regional level require these origin and destination surveys. And that's actually a cooperative agreement that we work with all of our transit peers, with Durham, Chapel Hill, Carrboro MPO, the Capital Area MPO. All of the transit agencies conduct these surveys the same way at the same time, and we use all of that travel data to help us make planning decisions on a 25-year horizon. That's at the MPO level. And then locally, that helps us model projects as we look for things such as corridor planning, new routes, those types of elements. Next slide. So real quick, let me go back to the one slide that was in the middle there that gave a breakdown of our administrative budget line item as it relates to your handout that you received for our budget. The FY20 adopted work plan, it was shown within that budget at $675,000, and so that is the correct number that was out there when we adopted the FY20 budget. In FY20, we were very fortunate that the Wake Transit Plan, or TPAC, allowed us to move forward with two positions mid-year. So at that time, after that was allocated at the end of, beginning actually of the second quarter of the fiscal year, FY20, we started working on the hiring for those positions. We got those booked and we started moving forward. So you can see there the mid-year balances for both of those positions. If you look at the total request, and then that brings us to the new total for FY20. If you look at our FY21 request, we start with the base. We extrapolate those two positions for a full 12 months of funding. And when you look at those particular figures, please understand that as far as our positions go, those numbers include salary, benefits, furniture, communications, training, and any other miscellaneous expenses associated with those positions. Many times a budget line item, especially a traditional employee-based line item, would just be salary, and then benefits would be somewhere below that. But this does contain all of those elements. That is the way the TPAC within its, or the Wake Transit Plan within its budget processes or, develops those on an individual basis, but it is intended to be all-inclusive. So when they provide that budget to us for those positions, that's our cap. It doesn't mean that we spend every bit of that because we only charge actuals. So if we don't use all of that, then that goes back into the budget for use the next year. But certainly that is what is available for that position. Again, salary, benefits, everything from furniture to training to professional dues, all of that is included within those positions. Our office space lease, again, that is the Union Station piece that we're talking about, the lease of 6,200 square feet at Union Station. And then we always, as part of the Wake Transit Plan, estimates a 2.5% inflation increase annually. Again, we don't always experience a 2.5% increase annually. However, we do budget that. Whether it's operating expenses or whether it's salaries, again, Go Raleigh only charges Wake Transit actuals. So if we do not have detailed supporting documentation for those amounts, then we do not use the entire budget. We don't want to budget more than we need, but at the same time, we're going to make sure that we fall within that element there. So again, just making sure that everybody understands the true breakdown of those numbers. Andrea, I'm not sure. I'm sorry. At the end slide, please. I think we have the agenda back up there. Yep. So at this time, I'll be happy to entertain any questions. Again, we do have staff members available. Certainly, Mr. Walker is here, which deals with a lot of our capital within the Wake Transit Plan. Ms. Tucker is here, which is our CPA and in charge of all of our budget and finance. And if you have any detailed questions, we'll be happy to address them.
This is Nathan Spencer. I have a question, if that's okay, Madam Chair.
Yes, please, Nathan.
So just a couple things about the presented budget, and then I have some questions about the regular budget that wasn't included here. With regards to the $157,000 for office space, does that include the uplift, or is that the cost of the lease?
That is the cost of the annual lease for the 6,200 square feet.
Okay, and I appreciate this. Please appreciate that I don't have a knowledge on the city workings, but don't we own that space as a city?
The Union Station exists as an enterprise fund, so it is wholly funded with revenues from leasable space and from tenants. We receive tenants from Amtrak. We have a number of private tenants as well for retail, and we will be one of those tenants in the future.
Okay, that makes sense.
But it does exist as its own independent enterprise fund.
Okay, I appreciate that. Okay, then the other question was regards to this budget, and I'll ask my questions about the other budget later when we get to that. But with regards to this budget, is regular staff expected to get an increase this year, or is that just that Wake Transit staff?
As far as an increase?
Correct. Like in this budget, it has a 2.5% increase for staff that built into the Wake Transit Plan. I'm slightly worried that we're going to increase the budget for planners and engineers and not folks collecting trash and cleaning up our streets.
So that is actually brought forward just as an inflationary item. So it provides that opportunity. Certainly, individual salary increases are part of the city's overall adopted budget. And if that's not part of something that the city would adopt for everyone under policy, then that would not occur. So again, while the Wake Transit Plan may provide that opportunity within an overall budget for that to occur, if the city of Raleigh decided, or any other agency that is a sponsor of a Wake Transit project says that we can't afford that across the board, then they would follow their overall policy, and Wake Transit Plan would not supersede that.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Let me pause really quickly because it looks like we have another council member that's joined in. Can you state your name and just that your presence for the record?
Brian Burnett, Raleigh, North Carolina. We need anything else other than that?
Nah. We did the roll call. Since we have to do it virtually, we have to do a virtual roll call and actually say present and otherwise. So
Right.
That the notes and the minutes reflect that you were at the meeting.
Right. Thank you so much. Apologize for being late, folks. It's just crazy for everyone.
No problem. There's a lot going on. Danny, you had Daniel Coleman. Did you have a question?
To the breakdown of the administrative budget line, and going back to the original budget that's on page 3 of the attached today's meeting, you're showing an additional, the adopted budget was 75, but the final for 20 was 799,000. So you're introducing an actual column or figure, but on the budget as outlined on page 3 in the attachment, the moving document budget document, you don't have an actual column. So going forward, are we going to now have a physical, a column for the adopted physical, which in this case would be fiscal year 20, and are we now going to have a column that says the actual number, which the 790, the difference between the 675 and 799, all in there? That's the first question. Is that something, and I know Ron is out there somewhere, is that something new that we're adding? Because what is the purpose of having the 799 in the breakout if it's not in the budget itself? David.
Yeah, so again, the 675 was the original number for all of the adopted positions at the beginning of fiscal year 20. Capacity did allow for 2 funded positions midway through fiscal year, and they were actually allocated during the fiscal year and not during the actual budget adoption. They did go through the normal budget approval process within TPAC and their public announcement and other requirements there. We should have shown that up front, and I should have caught that, so that's certainly my fault. But that is what occurred, that those positions were booked during the year and are part of the 799, which is now the FY20 adopted or authorized budget for positions.
So the 675 now becomes 799, and I appreciate that. So, because I just want everything to sort of jive. And the second thing, that you have hired these 2 people.
They are actually in process. I can't say that they're hired. Obviously, we're in some challenging times, but they're certainly in process.
So then we would not really be spending the extra 124. I'm end of the day, but I think it's 124,000. We won't be spending that 124,020 or some parts thereof.
That is a very good assumption. It looks like that those positions would, if they did occur this fiscal year, would certainly be at the very end of the fiscal year, but would probably more likely happen sometime in early FY21. As I stated earlier, if we do not spend those funds, they are returned to the Wake Transit Plan for future allocation. We only charge actuals.
Okay, thank you very much, David.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Sorry.
I know part of the point of us having this special meeting today was for us to vote on this to pass on to City Council.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I was muted.
Okay.
I did have a question, if that's okay.
Oh, yes. Please, Michael Stevenson.
David, could you explain just a bit more what it means to place those funds in reserve? How does that actually work?
So funds in reserve, what that means from a practical standpoint is within the adopted budgets, which are approved by ultimately approved by the Capital Area MPO, as well as the Go Triangle Board of Trustees. And Go Triangle is the holder of those funds in account. That as we move forward with the budget, those funds are not authorized in any way for expenditure. What they have been done is pulled aside and stated that these will be evaluated for expenditure later in FY21. So that doesn't mean that the fund balance or the Wake Transit fund balance has a new amount of money available and that those projects are canceled in any way. It just means that based on actual sales tax receipts that can be calculated in September and October, we'll have a true picture of what the opportunities or lack of opportunities may look like in fiscal year 21. So the hope is that a final true up of what may or may not be possible in FY21 can occur by mid-fiscal year. Another way of stating that is maybe we can salvage the last half of the fiscal year with some progress, but only time will tell. And so certainly that's what we'll be working on as we enter the second quarter of fiscal year 21.
Okay, so it doesn't mean that this is money we know we have and we're kind of putting it in this account. It means these are assumptions that have to be verified at a later point in time.
That is correct. We need to make sure that those revenues are there and will be available without a reasonable doubt. Because certainly budgeting processes are not just an annual iteration. Every action today impacts many more actions many years from now. So everything's a rolling effect. So all of that has to be taken into consideration as we approve the project.
Can I ask a follow-up question? I'm referring back now to the actual FY21 budget summary document. And so there are things that are projections, I assume. But so a couple I'll point out. There's an NCDOT line item. The first one actually shows a significant increase from 20. And just curious, are we still believing that that is, something that we could count on? For example, we're showing decreases in fare box and advertising, which makes sense. And then likewise, we're still showing 11 million from the general fund. So just curious about the NCDOT money and the general fund. Are those also things that will have to be verified later?
The short answer is yes, by all means. And we do have some things that we're working on to help us with the higher level of unknown that our current environment brings us. To talk about the NCDOT amount very quickly, in FY20, or actually in FY19, the State Maintenance Assistance Program, which provides operating assistance to transit agencies across the state, was reduced by the state legislature. During fiscal year 20, we actually budgeted that new amount. So we were at one time receiving a little over, right around $2.5 million. In FY20, we knew that cut was there, and so that was what we had programmed. During FY20, we're very fortunate. This was certainly pre-COVID. The legislature reinstated the state maintenance funding, which we were very happy with. So at that point, we put our new projected total. The adopted 20 total was $19.97, and the 21 requested is actually what we received in 20. So we actually came in over budget in FY20 compared to what we had budgeted. In FY21, could that 2.9 not occur at that level? I would say that anything is possible at this point. However, that is an authorized revenue through North Carolina Department of Transportation currently, and we'll certainly be monitoring that. As with the general fund contribution, the way that we show some of our general fund contributions, whether it's in capital or whether it's on the operating side, that reduction there is not really that large of a reduction. Again, some of those funds that were carried under general fund contribution are still in a general fund contribution, but they're on a capital match instead of a operating match, if that makes sense. So some of that's a little bit technical on the way those funds are applied to projects within different program funds. But to answer your overall question, is there uncertainty within revenue streams everywhere? I would say most definitely at this time. How are we dealing with that? As we discussed at the last meeting, we were very fortunate to receive approximately $23.5 million in CARES Act funding, specifically for transit. We at a staff level, working with our budget office, are trying to develop a strategy for the utilization of those funds that will not only shore up fiscal year 20 revenue losses and expenditure gains, but also provide us with opportunities to shore up uncertainties in FY21 and FY22. We don't currently have that plan completed yet because it's somewhat complex. What we're trying to do at a staff level is provide maximum opportunity for flexibility, and in a grantsmanship world, that's not always easy. It's the smart thing to do, but it also takes a lot of background work and legwork working with NCDOT and CAMPO as far as programming and making sure that projects are eligible if they are put into the grant. So the CARES Act funds are 100% federal, do not require a local match, but everything that has a substantial capital component still has to follow the MPO state and federal planning process. So that means it has to have a state transportation improvement program number and all of the processes that go with that. So we're working on all those elements in the background to make sure that when we bring forward to the Transit Authority as well as Council a plan for how those CARES Act will be utilized, I would just ask you to understand that while we'll have a plan, that plan is going to have lots of levers that will allow us flexibility as conditions change. But number one, it will help us make sure that from a revenue standpoint, as far as farebox, NCDOT, and other sources, that we're at least secure through FY22. I know that was a little long-winded, but my apologies.
No, thank you. And I have one more, not to drag it out, but it's interesting to me that the Go Raleigh Access program actually shows some increases. And I'm just curious, is that just reflecting a general trend of usage, or is it more specifically related to the pandemic?
I would say that under this scenario, there are two major contributors to the Access program's growth. Number one is the Access program is growing just in its existing service area. So trips per capita within our existing service area are increasing. We have an aging population. More individuals are aware of the program. We are experiencing more trips on a just per capita. Beyond that, as part of the Wake Transit Plan in FY20, we experienced the single largest growth of service area for transit within the city of Raleigh in over a decade. So we drew in a lot more service area. So part of that also recognizes that growth.
Thank you. That's all very helpful. Appreciate it.
This is Nathan Spencer. I wanted to ask some questions regarding the budget included in the May RTA agenda that we were just talking about.
Taking it back. Not doing anything with him yet. Right.
Brian, you're unmuted.
It's 250.
So the questions that I have are, I think you answered a lot of them with regards to the CARES Act money. I guess the two questions that I have that still remain are, is there a deadline with regards to when we have to use the CARES Act money up? And the second question is based on the fact that most businesses have been closed for many months, and may not, some may not reopen, do we really believe that the MSD from downtown Raleigh is going to continue being able to afford the R line, and what are we doing to shore that up?
So I think that's a two-part question. One was regarding the R line, and the first one was just on the CARES Act in general or revenues.
Yeah, when does it expire and when do we have to use it up?
Oh, expiration, my apologies. So yes, the CARES Act, it is requested that we obligate the funds by the end of this calendar year. Obligation means that we provide a plan for how we will use them. Traditionally, most federal grants, and this particular grant is following Section 5307 guidelines. And so under that particular grant category, we usually have 3 years that we can change scopes and work within the existing budget authority of that grant. So once we take, I'll just use $100,000. So there's $100,000 in a grant. For 3 years, we can determine that we want to change projects or we want to do things differently. We want to change money between capital planning and operating. We have some flexibility. It's not easy. It takes a lot of administrative work, and FTAs are not always happy. But you have that authority to certainly to amend that grant. After that 3-year period, you can still keep that grant, but the scopes are locked. And so we'll be following that existing Section 5307 authority. So for 3 years, we'll have flexibility, but by the end of that 3 years, you better have your funds where you need them most, because once those scopes are locked, you cannot change those scopes again after that time period. By legislative authority, there is no end date for the funds, so there was no horizon that they would be rescinded. As long as we have them obligated, they are safe. So again, we're working on that plan very quickly to try to make sure that, again, we do a smart plan that has flexibility and get those funds obligated by certainly by the end of this year. We'd love to get them obligated by the end of the summer. As far as the R-line question goes, the R-line is actually part of our overall budget and is funded by a combination of revenues from general fund, FTA operating, and state operating funds. And it falls within our general budget. Pretty much what you see here within the overall operating budget for the transit program, the R-line is part of that. We have embarked upon a new routing for that service, which was approved, and that just began. But again, as far as the funding source goes, that does come from transit, combination of general fund, federal funds, and state funds.
Thank you.
Thank you for those explanations, David. Do we have any other questions? Okay, would anybody like to make a motion to accept the budget as submitted to be presented?
I so move. Michael Stevenson.
Well, Michael can make it.
I'm sorry. I didn't hear you.
Can you all start over? I'm sorry. When you say it, you have to say your first and last name and then the whole spiel.
This is Michael Stevenson.
For the budget, but I'll stand down, Michael.
What? Okay, we just need somebody to do it.
This is Michael Stevenson. I move that we approve the budget as presented.
Thank you, Michael. Can we get a second?
I'll second it. Morris Cook.
Thank you, Morris. So the move has been made and properly seconded to accept this budget to be presented to the City Council at their next meeting in June. We're going to do a roll call to see who all is in favor. Does anybody have any questions before we jump into the roll call? All right. Nathan Spencer.
No. I vote aye.
Michael Stevenson.
Aye.
Daniel Coleman.
Aye.
Morris Cook.
Aye.
Ryan Burnett,
Aye.
Joshua Gill,
Aye.
and I, for Tulupe Omokai, I vote aye too. So it looks like the motion has passed for us to accept this budget to be presented to City Council.
Madam Chair, Daniel.
Yes, Daniel Coleman.
David, I thought you gave a very good explanation of that funding stuff. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Staff
David,
support.
You and staff did a great job breaking down the budget and presenting it to us in a way that we can understand. I really appreciate you all taking the time to do that, especially since we had to move to a special meeting to do it. So I appreciate the diligence.
Thank you.
All right. If there's nothing else, and I am pulling up our agenda, and it doesn't look like there is.
We do have one item, Madam Chair. If everyone has about 3 minutes, I'm going to check with staff very quickly. We did have a very quick video that we were going to show you at the conclusion of the meeting. Again, it's only about 3 minutes. We did have a hard stop at 4:30 today, so we have plenty of time to see this. But again, I'm going to check with staff just to make sure that that's available. Just a little bit of background on the video is certainly we're all experiencing some unprecedented times, very challenging times, and we have employees which really go above and beyond duty every day and out in the community and making sure that we maintain mobility. And so this video was really a tribute to them. And if we're able to, we're going to try to bring that up. If we're not, we're going to get you a link to that this evening. So hopefully we'll be able to show it there in just a moment. So if everybody wants to give me just a second here, hopefully that will start right up. Looks like we're trying to figure out how to get that to roll real quick, but I think we've just about got it. We've got it.
Thinking about it.
That was a great video, David. Thank you for that.
That was beautiful.
That was great.
Thank you.
So, just in closing, a huge thank you to our communication staff here with Transit, RTN, who is making it possible for us to do this meeting today, their staff who got out at some really early mornings and took some video. So just a huge thank you to them. A great partnership there. Our Department of Communications here with the City of Raleigh as well. They all collaborated and got all of that done. So, and just a big shout out to all of our employees who are out there every day and right now as we speak, and just a big thank you.
Definitely. Thank you. Thank you to all the people, the operators, everyone. And thank you to all of you, everybody in the office that's out there working to make sure that the ball keeps rolling and that, you know, we're making sure that we're not just taking care of business day to day, that we're still keeping progress going for the future. So thank you.
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I could just have one last note.
Who's saying
This is
it?
Dar Tenori.
Yes. How are you?
Just a reminder, because I think member Brian Burnett joined the meeting a little late. Just a reminder for everybody, keep your cameras on. Treat these remote meetings as if they were regular in-person meetings. So keep the cameras on during the meeting. If there's a technical issue that prevents you from keeping the camera on, then let IT try to resolve that. And if it can't be resolved, then it's up to the chair to determine how to go forward.
Thank you.
No problem.
It's definitely it's a new normal, at least hopefully just for the temporary phase. So we have to make sure that we're dotting all our I's and crossing all our T's. But thank you for that. And thank you for keeping us, making sure that we stay on point. If there's nothing else, I want to conclude this meeting at 4:19 p.m. on May 28th, Thursday, May 28th. Thank you for chiming in and giving us your time to vote on these important issues that we kind of tabled over so we can get a better understanding of it. And I hope that you all stay safe and sane in these precarious times.
Yes.
Thank
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
We'll
you.
see you June 11th.
Thanks. Bye.